Hey, Darik, you out there, buddy?
Yeah, what's going on?
Just wrapped up a closing. I'm at the title company.
Well played.
Yeah, so you and I are, maybe we should have a conversation about how to list houses, huh? Just the two of us?
Just us. We'll fool everybody and call it a mastermind. Just to make ourselves feel really smart.
Oh, man. Telling you.
You closing it at on-site down in Apple Valley?
Yeah, Michelle's office.
Yeah. I recognize the office there. That's
Yeah.
in the KW office, right? Or in the KW building.
Yeah, she just told me today that they're moving.
Which one?
Yeah,
On-site or
KW is. No, KW is, yeah. I don't know where to, but.
I hadn't heard that. Interesting.
Yeah, I've been closing with Michelle the entire 22 years. She's my only closer. My
She's
wife,
like your personal closer.
yeah, so she closes both sides of most of them. You know, mortgage closing, and then she does real estate closing as well. So
Cool.
yeah, it's nice to have that.
Amy, why are you flying blind?
Because I have wet hair and I just got out of the shower.
Probably good reason.
I'm clothed in case you guys were worried about that, but
Tastefully
no makeup.
done.
You don't want to see that.
Well, I'm curious if Wendy's going to be on the call here or on the Zoom. I'm assuming so.
Am I the only other person on here?
Right now, you're going to get an awful lot of attention. I'll tell you that much.
Oh.
Right? And you don't seem to be having any issues because I've seen your name on some sales.
Yeah, just 2 in Plymouth, but now I need some new ones because I'm done with those.
Right?
Yeah.
Where did you end up picking up those leads from? If I can ask.
The one on Gleason Lake was someone Kirk knew, my husband.
Yeah.
It was a referral. And then the other one was from school. And I think I ran into her at an open house I did in Plymouth like 2 years ago.
Cool.
So.
Very nice. You know, actually that like confirms for me how important it can be to have your sign on a busy road, because the fact, like, I've probably driven down Gleason Lake Drive. I bet I've driven by maybe 3 times in the past month, and yet my impression is that you're doing a lot of stuff. So
Right.
really, I mean, for
awesome.
Real. Yeah. Well, I mean, not that you're not, but like.
Well, not really, but yeah. It's good. Yeah, I think it's good to have the sign out.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially, yeah, when it's on a busy road. And that neighborhood's nice because everyone knows who I am. So.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. Wendy, are you going to go out and knock on doors? I mean, it takes a little more time now than it did before.
Yeah.
And I don't know where the rest of our peeps are, the people who wanted to see this. And next step is, you know how I start calling you out in team meeting? I'm going to just start texting down the list. Where's your butt?
Right.
So Darik, where are you getting all your business from lately? Listings. Not really interested in your buyers because they're difficult, but what are you doing where are you getting listings from?
Specifically from my sphere, and that sphere, and I should say referral too. And basically no cold business or like FISBO expired, and I did sell a FISBO earlier this year, but no expired business or anything like that, or no cold calling. It's all just sphere business, because I really focused on that earlier this year.
Okay. And have you found that this current environment makes it even more conducive to, be getting business from people that already trust you?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, I don't know that I've competed, or I don't know that I've knowingly competed for a listing.
Yeah.
It's more like they're deciding if they want to sell, more so than like, or sell or buy or move or whatever, more so than like coming in and competing for a sale. How about for you?
Pretty similar. I mean, it's the vast majority of the business has been past clients and referrals. I just picked up a new buyer from an open house on a listing this last Saturday, but that's been rare because not a lot of people come through the open houses, and can't do very many just because the clients aren't comfortable with them. And then furthermore, most of the houses sell in the first day or two in multiples, so you don't even get a chance to do the opens to see people face to face.
Right.
So if you can establish trust with somebody that you meet face to face, then I guess it does go back to relying on those people that we already do know.
Right.
So, yeah, I would say almost all of my listings have been past clients and referrals, and it's the same situation where we're not interviewing for it. They're already going to work with you. It's just a matter of, should we sell now? Should we take advantage of today's market? What are we going to do on the buy side if you sell our house so quickly? Just those concerns that people generally have.
So I want to ask you a question, because so a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, maybe, we made a conscious decision to change how and when we were listing properties. And so now my process for the last 2 years has been, we go live with properties on Thursday and don't allow showings until Friday. And then we hold open houses Saturday and Sunday. And I've told all of our sellers up front about this, and pose the opportunity to them as we believe this is a chance for you to get into multiple offers, and we've found this to be effective. Would you be willing to consider using this as your listing model? And they've bought into that model, and I mean, I don't do the open houses, but I know our buyer agents had been really frustrated because we kept literally like the houses that sell, and then we would never have a chance to hold the opens. And I'm just curious if you're using like a similar path, or I mean, if it sounds like maybe not, if the properties sell that fast, then like you can't hold the opens.
Yeah, that's a good question. So first things first, we list the vast majority of homes on Thursday. And almost every single listing we've got an open scheduled for Saturday or Sunday, that first weekend.
Yeah.
Now, until the last 30 days of just extremely high demand on these listings, we typically would have time to get through one of those opens. And we typically don't list on Thursday and wait for showings until Friday. We list on Thursday and they can show Thursday. Most of the times, maybe there's one, and then they're ready. Nevertheless, that's not a bad idea anyway, just to make sure that the seller's ready and try to line up a couple of them. Now, there's two other components to this I feel that it is important. The first buyers and the first offer is almost always going to be the best offer. I mean, this is somebody who's made an intentional and purposeful drive to get to the house first, and the agent is saying, we've looked at a lot of stuff, we've written on a lot of houses, and we're going to be first in, and we're going to be the first to write. So we always take those extremely seriously because you don't want to lose that buyer. You don't want the best buyer to waver. Also, in a situation where you've got 3 or 4 offers and you end up accepting the highest one, well, that person's going to be extremely anxious about the fact that they paid the most for the house. There's all those variables that sometimes we do sell if we get 1 or 2 offers and we know we may have a few more coming the next day. We'll that day. And then with open houses on Saturdays or Sundays, it's really tricky too, because in the last 2 months, there's been a number of times where we sold the house on Friday night or Saturday morning and the open house is still scheduled. Well, you can't cancel it. You can cancel it on MLS. It's not going to cancel on Zillow for a week and a half. It's not going to cancel on the other sites that quickly at all. And so people do show up. And so I still do them, and I just let them know right away, right when they walk in, you just let them know. And,
Sure.
There's not much you can do about that. But I really like the idea of trying to get all that activity into the first weekend, especially now.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I mean, there's plenty of ways to skin the cat here, right? And I am interested to hear anybody's opinion on that, because we had a number of situations over the last couple of years where we had accepted or the seller had accepted an offer that was like first person through the door, had to buy it. And then, so then we changed the status and we turn down everybody else that has any interest in seeing it. And then if the first buyer ends up backing out, then we've now missed out on that whole opportunity for that very intense time period. And that's kind of part of the reasoning for doing it this way. But I agree, most of the time that first buyer is, there's a reason. I tell my clients that that's either the most highly motivated buyer, or it might be the pickiest buyer, because they've turned down every house, they've rejected every other house that's come on the market. So yeah.
And you have to consider this too. From a negotiating standpoint with these sellers and the buyers, how many buyers get nervous after they've written an offer? The answer is easy. 100%. How many get more nervous after they've slept on it and the next morning when things are still open for discussion and they ran through the house so quickly? So you don't want to expedite it so much that you don't have somebody with a comfort level.
Right.
However, at the same time, the phrase is strike while the iron is hot, right? You just don't want to lose that excitement and that motivation. And it's a fine line. It's tricky, but
sure. Well, I don't know that there's a right answer, but I just thought it was interesting to have a little discussion on it.
Well, the other thing, Darik, is it's coming soon. So in light of this whole, list Thursday, do an open house on Saturday, the last 4 that we've listed, we have used coming soon for 7 to 10 days in advance. And because of COVID, this has been, it's been wonderful, because then everything does get compressed to showings on Fridays and Saturdays. The last few, we didn't even have any showings on Sunday because everybody got to see it in advance, get their schedules ahead of time and say, we're in there in those 2 days,
Right.
If you've got a property in a good area, that's going to be priced well.
Right. It's interesting because I think a lot of times for me, my motivation is get the property on the market as soon as you possibly can. And yet, like you're saying, maybe there's an element of patience involved too, because that 7-day lead up or whatever, that might really set it up for a really high amount of activity that when it does actually go live. So,
Hey
Interesting.
guys, in the listing seller conversation realm, Tam was saying the other day she had a listing that was ready to go, but then they sold it before she got to go on the market. They found their own buyer for it. So when you get that call from your seller, what's that look like? And Tam, maybe you want to pipe in here and just talk about how those conversations are going and what you can do about that.
Yeah, I should mention I've run into this before where I had pictures done, just we hadn't gone on the market yet. And then the cousin came in, wanted to buy it. And I was able to have that conversation to represent both of them. So this time, however, not, right? So just sign the listing and then somebody else comes in, says they want to buy it, right? So they're talking directly to the seller before we go on the market. And that they have somebody else that'll do it, had conversations, but that would do the paperwork for $750 flat. So then, and I don't know if that'll actually come to fruition, come together, but if it doesn't, then obviously we'll go on the market. But in that scenario, we did try to facilitate conversations to, we just can't do $750 for paperwork is essentially where that one was at. I'm curious what other people might have done in that situation.
The girls are gonna come over, but I'm not gonna let them inside the house.
Hey, Amy, can you mute temporarily while you got that background noise?
Yes.
Thank you. No worries.
All right, got it.
So
Go ahead, Derek.
in the past, I've run into that too, and I've gotten around it by signing the listing as soon as we possibly can, and then signing the withhold. And I mean, I'm sure that's not news to you. It's come in useful for me though, in that that the people, I think that for the seller, like it's like a mindset change when they sign that, and maybe the listing too, is that now you're their representative, and maybe you bring it up at the table with them, and maybe go through it with them so that they understand if there's somebody that wants to see the property, that's fine. Make sure that person comes to you. We've had them where I've had them where somebody is like by chance interested, and at the table I'll tell the seller, okay, well, in that case I'll reduce my 6% commission down to 4% if that person specifically buys, and then we'll actually write that person's name on the contract on the extra lines, almost like you're excluding them, except rather than excluding them, I'm making an exception for them. So, I mean, it doesn't sound like that was your circumstance for that situation, but those are a couple things I've done.
Yeah, I hear you. I've done that too, and that's worked out with me in the past, because this person's name did show up at the listing appointment. We signed it, but they did not. We worked around all those different conversations. It just didn't. I don't know if they'll actually end up buying with that one, but we tried to match, but they said that somebody else would do the paperwork. The buyer had someone to do the paperwork for $750. I was like, well, not gonna mess with that.
Right.
But I like everything you're saying, because I've done that too, and I've been able to do that where I dropped it down and represented both.
Right.
And I've actually dropped it. I actually ended up, I think that was a 5% I dropped it to, and I represented both, but
right.
Just different on this one. So I like everything you just said, and it's worked in the past. It just didn't on this one.
Yeah, and you have to decide whether or not you're going to do that variable rate with your sellers. It's something I definitely support. There's certain circumstances, and so it's once you get that listing agreement signed, if the seller understands that you do want them reaching out to their neighbors and to their family and to their friends, and go ahead and do some marketing as long as it's controlled, to also try to draw in a buyer, and just know that if they bring in a buyer that does not have an agent, then you are going to reduce your commission, obviously, and take care of that. And then I agree with Darik that, they're hiring you on the spot right then to be the actual salesperson. And that's more than just marketing. It's more than just getting an offer on the table. It's actually being the person who's responsible for the entire transaction. It's one thing to get an offer. It's an entirely another thing to have a degree of professionalism that's going to give somebody the expertise that's needed to get you from the offer through the inspection and the appraisal and the title work and everything all the way to close. There's just so much other stuff that happens there. And so encouraging that seller to say, hey, you do have somebody, just make sure that they come through me. It's the easiest thing. And just know that if you find that person and you bring them through me and we vet them and make sure they're qualified, they don't have a house to sell, so on and so forth, we do all that for you, you're going to save a ton of money. So yeah, I like it.
So Amy, Tam, and Jelena, are there some big objections or even small objections that you're hearing now that you would like to get the input, and how Darik and Rick are answering those? Remember, this is the interactive part.
There's Jelena.
My only objective right now is I have 2 listings withheld, and both of them are, they've been looking for properties for a long time and we can't find anything. And so, I mean, I'm looking at expireds and cancels and for sale by everything that I can do, and they're not willing to list until they find something. One in particular, they've been looking for a year and a half before I signed them, and they're just not ready to move if they don't have something to move into.
Congrats on getting the listing signed.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, because that seems like a pretty big achievement with those people. I mean, really. So is it that they like literally have not seen a house in a year and a half that they would buy?
We wrote an offer on one and lost, and it took them a long time to find that, or, you know, for us to come to that. And I actually wasn't working with them very long before we wrote that offer. But they've been looking on their own, and it took a long time for them to find it. And we've been looking at properties since and haven't found something that compares.
And they're approved to purchase non-contingent?
They are not approved to purchase non-contingent. So we can't even do much unless they're ready to list, but they're not interested in listing until they find something to
Right.
buy.
I would, in that example, I would take them back to the pain of losing the house that they lost and say something like, you remember the house on Park, and do you remember how you felt when you lost that house because you don't have everything in place? That's going to continue to happen over and over and over again until you have your home sold and you're ready to buy non-contingent, because nobody's going to accept a contingent offer right now. And if they needed more motivation to find or a better idea that the right house could be out there, I would take them to or, you know, show them the pendings or solds and have them understand that there are properties on the market that would meet their needs. And you know what, right now they might have to find temporary housing for a couple months if it came to that.
Okay. And with the market the way it is, would you recommend, you know, now is the time to sell? And if we don't find something, you know, temporary housing might be a better bet than potentially losing the equity that you have or the value that you could get currently?
I believe so. I mean, I don't know that there's a time when somebody could have sold their home for more money than they could right now. And with interest rates as low as they are, the affordability on what they're buying is really at an all-time low. I mean, maybe in 2010, there was a little bit greater affordability, but that was like a different factor at that time. So,
So I'll support everything Darik said, and then a couple of additions. So there's no greater motivation for a buyer than having their house sold. And so this only works well for buyers and sellers if it's done in a natural way. So let me just say that, in my opinion, it's very probable that that buyer that you have right now is not anywhere near motivated enough to buy in the current market conditions. That buyer needs to be more motivated and also needs to be more qualified. So the conversation can be, you know what is most important now? What's most important right now to you guys? And if you want to take advantage of the current market conditions, the seller's market right now, you're gonna sell your house at the highest price. But the only way to do that is to agree that you want to take advantage of it right now. So what we can do, we'll get your house on the market, get it listed for a fair price, potentially go into multiples, get it sold, know that you haven't found a house yet. We'll make sure in negotiating, especially if there's more than one offer, that we put the closing date out 60 or 75 days. And let's get this thing going. Let's at least know that piece of the puzzle. Now, what you know, Jelena, is on the other side, you're not going to get somebody into a homeless situation. And most realtors aren't. Because of this, now your buyer is actually very motivated. So when it comes to the next offer on the house that they actually like, they're not going to be contingent, first of all, because you got their house sold, probably without an inspection. So, and the appraisal is going to happen quickly. So you're already past that, you're non-contingent, but they're also going to be a lot more aggressive with their potential to purchase that home. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, having a qualified buyer who's got the motivation to buy into the market. But it won't work unless you get them over that first piece, which is taking advantage of the sale of the house, right? So I absolutely 100% would focus all of my attention on the conversation about getting your house sold, taking advantage of that, because that's all positive.
Okay.
You know, you can also, I've lured some people, that sounds like a bad word. And I've lured some people into going live with their home and offering the idea of the home sale being contingent on them finding the right house. And we've talked about that. And then when it comes time with the offer, so we also have talked about, you know, pushing it out 60 to 70 days or 60 to 90 days, like Rick just said, about pushing out that closing. And what I found is that the people, when it comes time to have an offer in front of them, and we discuss the terms of the offer in front of them, they're more concerned at that time about not losing the buyer than they are about, you know, all of the anxiety about becoming homeless and everything else. And then we're able to work in that, you know, 60-day window or whatever. And they need to understand that if they're the most highly motivated buyer in the market and they have 30 days to find a house and then 30 days to close on it, like, we'll be at every house that comes on the market as soon as it does in the next 30 days, and they're going to find the right house. I mean, unless they're looking for a home with a turret, they should be able to find a house in the next 30 days, right?
So what do you guys think about bridge loans as an answer to that?
Well, yeah, today we've got all kinds of people getting qualified for bridge loans. I mean, it's short term. It buys you a little bit of time. I mean, the conversation you have with your clients about, you know, you can get this temporary loan. You know, all they're doing is borrowing off the equity of the sale of their house. You're just using that as your leverage, you know, to have two mortgages at the same time. The probability of them paying two mortgages is highly unlikely because of the carryover there with timing, which we can get into. That's a different conversation. But again, I don't mind the idea of the conversation of a bridge loan there, except that they still, it might be in the same position where you got this buyer now who's saying, yeah, okay, in order for me to buy non-contingent, find the right house and buy non-contingent, I've got this risk of a bridge loan and the potential of having two house mortgage payments at the same time may demotivate the buyer even more than they already are. So I just really like the idea of getting their house in the market, getting it sold, and getting them in the natural position where they're not stressed, but it's just natural that piece is behind them, and now you're clear to move forward. So
I agree totally. And I would say as well, like, with those people, to make sure that they understand when their payment will be due on that next house they're buying. And if you bought a home today and closed on August 31st, their first payment would be due on October 1st. And if you were able to push that closing out another 10 days to, you know, September 10th or something like that, then their first payment isn't going to be until November 1st. And that's a heck of a long time to get their home sold, at least get an offer on it or something like that. And, you know, maybe they can afford to carry it for a month or two. Well, they just bought themselves a whole lot of a whole lot of confidence in doing that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Such a good point. That's a great point. Okay. Miss Colleen, did you have any questions today? Things that you'd like to talk about with these guys?
You know, my biggest struggle right now is making sure that I have people lined up with the right financing. And sometimes two of my buyers are really happy with the lender that they're working with because they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And re-educating them is not easy without sounding like, oh, you should use my lender. Not because it's my lender, but because you need a better solution. And so that's one of the things that I've really been struggling with this week, is just making sure that people know, gosh, you know, if you're FHA 3% down, if you could go conventional 3% down, you have a much better possibility of winning that multiple offer bid.
Mhm.
And so that's just something. So if you guys have any insight on, I've
Yeah,
also reached out to somebody in Keller Mortgage. I started work a little bit with Keller Mortgage, but I don't have a lot of experience with that. Do you have insight on that? If that's helping you to put people in the position to help them win?
Yeah, I would say that a conversation that I have in that case, whenever a buyer that I'm working with already has a lender, so they've already do all their banking at US Bank or at Wells Fargo, and they've already talked to a loan officer, or they've got a friend from Mortgages Unlimited that they used last time they bought a house, and now they've been referred to me. I always just keep it very simple and say, you know what, under any circumstance, when you're purchasing something, and you got an opportunity to use more than one contractor, I would encourage you to at least talk to a second lender. And I do have somebody who I'd like you to just cross-reference, and then they can compare apples to apples. And so I say it'll be fine if you choose to continue to work with Wells Fargo after talking to 2 different lenders, but wouldn't it make most sense to you to at least get an idea if somebody might be able to offer you a much different program or a better program? Because positioning ourselves in today's market in multiple offers is really important. So it's good to know where your finances are so that we can bring forth the best offer and get you the right house. So, and I've never had anybody say no. I mean, they may not work with the lender that I recommend, which is fine. But that means that they've been vetted, and we know where their finances are a lot more comfortable, because you're probably not going to get that from the Wells Fargo loan officer. So.
We just had this happen with one of our buyers where he came in pre-approved through his US Bank Loan Center, and where he banks, and we just got an offer accepted for him, and I think we're set to close on like September 14th. And he contacted US Bank and told them about his offer, and they told him the soonest they could close is October 15th, which is crazy. So we referred him to our lender, and our lender is able to got him pre-approved, and will be able to close on time. And even relaying a story like that to somebody could certainly help. So.
Thanks, you guys. I appreciate both of those.
Yes, and Colleen, I do want to make sure that you know that your video is on as well. You have a nice sweater.
I did
And
not
whoever you're
know my
visiting with,
video was on.
whoever you're visiting with seems really nice as well. So,
This is my friend Nancy.
oh, that's wonderful. Hi,
And
Nancy. That's great.
Nancy fell this week, so I'm bringing her honey.
Oh.
Oh, isn't that
Because
sweet?
you should have something sweet.
Very
Right.
nice. Amy, you've been quiet. Are you still there? I mean, your screen's black.
Yeah.
Sure, you're still there. Okay. Do you have any issues, any concerns with your listings right now? Any objections that you're running into? I mean, what are people saying that are causing you some trouble?
I mean, the biggest thing is so many people who want to maybe move up, but can't find the properties, and it might just be the motivation, or they're scared to do it. But finding them the property to actually, take the leap and do it.
Mhm.
Talking about what are you
Mhm.
doing?
Can you guys talk a little bit about future pacing? So I was on the James Shaw Mastermind call this morning, and that was one of their suggestions for overcoming the objections with sellers who are a little reluctant because they aren't sure they'll get that house, and how they use future pacing to help them visualize where they want to be and tap into their motivation.
Yeah, let me go ahead and Google that real quick.
I don't know what that is. Darik, you talked about doing, so if you list with the intent of subject on them finding a house,
Yep.
do you put that in the listing or do you not put that in if you say they often change their mind?
We did it on a property, and I put it in agent remarks in MLS that the property was being sold subject to seller finding an acceptable home, and it never became an issue. We had a buyer that bought out on a property that was under that same circumstance too. So, yeah, I mean, I
have a little bit different opinion on it. I haven't used it, and this is not to say that it's not okay, but back to motivation. Imagine a buyer coming in and seeing that, because I have been on the buyer side multiple times where I've seen that in a listing. The buyer comes in and has to wait for the seller to find a house, and the buyer already knows that it's difficult to find a house in a market where inventory is down 27% from last year. And so when they go to write that offer on the house, you've significantly demotivated that buyer to write an extremely high non-contingent offer with no inspection. So again, this real estate works. There's lots of ways to skin a cat, but real estate works one way. These are separate transactions, and I would encourage you to counsel your client and focus on one transaction at a time. Is it scary to know that the inventory's down and it may be more difficult to find a house? Yeah, it's a little bit more scary now than it was last year. Is it more difficult for us to find the right house for our clients? Yes, it is. Do we find them? Yes, we do. Do we have any homeless clients? No, we don't. So once again, do you want to take advantage of this market and get your house sold potentially for the highest price in the history of us being in real estate for Darik and I 20, or not? And if you do, then let's focus on that. And once that happens and we've seen success in that transaction, then everything else is going to work the way it should. You'll be non-contingent. You don't have to do a bridge loan. You have a ton of leverage when you're writing an offer on the house that you find. Now, are we going to find lots of them that you're going to say are wonderful, the dream house for you? Probably not. Are we going to find one that is going to be the dream house for you? Yes, we will, because it has always happened. And once we find that, then you will be in the position to actually buy it. It just doesn't work the other way. Kicking tires doesn't work. You'll never buy a car, if you just go to the place and just look around. You'll buy a car when you just sold your last car and it was a Porsche with a black convertible top and Darik drove away. That's when you're going to go buy another car.
Right. I think it's kind of similar to buying a car. You don't buy a car by looking at the outside. You buy a car when you drive it. And if you take the same approach with those people, they may or may not be out looking at houses. They may have disqualified every home that's come on the market online, and they'll if they get out and see homes, I think they're that much more likely to start believing that there is or can be a home out there for them. And and really, I would just get back to showing them the homes that have sold that are perfect for them, because it shouldn't be one. It should be there should be 25 of them or something like that over the history of time or whatever, that they can go back to and look at and say, yeah, what, that could be the house. So
I think that is the best thing Darik has said so far. I mean, that's genius to go back. He said a lot of good things, but this is one key element. This is a takeaway. It's not about the houses that are available right now that they're seeing. First of all, they go on to Zillow and there's a few houses and you tell them, no, they're sold subject to an inspection. It's not them on your auto search and they're only seeing one or two pop up. It's all those houses that were on for a day or two that were amazing, that had good realtors, that were good houses that sold quickly over the past year. Well, if you can't send them a bunch of really good houses that sold quickly over the past year, then go quickly, that sold quickly over the past 2 years. so that they understand what has actually been out there and what will be out there for them to be aggressive and assertive when they're in a position to buy. Those great houses are going to be out there. They're going to go really, but you know what? You're going to be ready for it. And I'm an extremely determined agent. I'm going to be all over it. We're going to you show it the first day, and you're going to write an offer, and it's going to be aggressive, and you're going to get the house. But that's super important to go back and show them the reality of the houses that have actually been on the market, not the ones that are on the market.
Okay.
Do you guys use low interest rates to help key into motivation as well?
Rick?
Well, we use low interest rates to, with the seller. Again, if we're focused on getting these listings, then yeah, I would say to the seller, one of the great things about now is not only we have low inventory, but we've got phenomenal interest rates, which means that there's a whole pool of buyers, a whole additional pool of buyers who actually can afford your house now. Whereas last year at 4.5%, they couldn't. Now they're at 3%. So their price range just went from, qualifying at 400,000 to qualifying at 500,000, and we're going to list at 550. So, you got more buyers.
Well, I was thinking in terms of overcoming that objection about, I don't want to list right now because I don't have anything to buy, but also saying, yeah, but if we will find you something, and at this rate, who knows what they'll be when you finally, there's more inventory.
Right. What you can afford now won't be what you can afford later with a higher interest rate.
During last week's meeting, I ran it during the meeting, and a home that's priced at 325 right now at a 3% interest rate, if that property, and this was specifically for somebody who says they want to wait until the market goes back down. If that property drops by 10%, ish, goes down to 300, but the interest rates go back up by 0.75%, which is pretty realistic. I mean, they're not going to be at 3% for very long. Or I just got approved at 275. In that example, the payment on that home is less at 325 with a 3% interest rate than it is at 300 with a 3.75 interest rate. So, and you can break down the math, and it wasn't like $5 cheaper. It was like significant enough that it would make a difference in the payment. I think it was $75 cheaper. So,
Wow.
like running that example for them, well, I was kind of blown away when I did it, and then I didn't get into talking about it during that meeting, but that's going through that, and mathematically it makes sense for them to do it right now if that's in their, if it's in their world.
Yeah, I think that's, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's true, because we just bought our house in October and we were at that 375, and our refinancing already, and our payment's gonna drop $150 a month.
Yeah. I mean,
And and our mortgage is less than a year old.
right. That would have, had the conditions been like that when you were buying, your whole outlook on everything would have been different too. Oh my God, well, we could afford the, 350 house or the 370 house, or, whatever. That, just putting it in terms of what their monthly payment is a great way to bring them back to month to month.
And our mortgage is higher than that, but
yeah. Well, sure. Right.
Well, and in
so
addition,
it wouldn't be that much at that price point, but it's a significant amount of money.
Exactly.
In addition to the discussion about the numbers, I would always offer to people this piece of, just piece of conversation, which is, and it's, there's a little psychology here, it's not manipulative as much as it is just kind of presenting the reality, but doing it in a manner where I would say, we not to fear the future, but all I can tell you right now is we know exactly what the conditions of the market are right now. We know that you're going to sell at an extremely high, price based on the history of the market. It is a seller's market. And we also know that when you do buy now, in the next month or two, the interest rates are going to be exceptionally low. We do not know what next year looks like. We don't even know what it looks like after the election. And again, you're intentionally making sure that people have that general anxiety about the future, because we're going to have a lot more anxiety about uncertainty right now than we've had in our past. There's been so much uncertainty, so much change. People don't want any more. So we can take advantage of the fact that people really probably are not suitable or suited to accept lots of change right now, and just say, we know the environment right now. And so that should give you the comfort to say, let's sell now in the strong market and let's buy when we've got low interest rates, because we know what that looks like right now. We have no idea what that's going to look like after the election. We don't have any clue what it's going to look like next year at all. We don't even know if we're going to have
I
a
picked
pandemic.
up a listing. Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
100% agree with you, Rick. I just picked up a listing yesterday. And the reason the woman signed with me is because I said, you know, worst case scenario, if we get you sold, you can do a short-term rental in a hotel, throw your stuff into a pod. You've got $1,200 a month for the short-term, fully furnished hotel rental with a little kitchenette, and then your storage, $300, $400 a month. You're still under what your mortgage would be, and that'll give you time to.
Mhm. Oh, we lost you, Colleen. There you go.
That's helpful, but that's what worked for me this week.
That's very creative problem solving. All right, I know Darik is on his way to an appointment, but he's still dialed in with us. Anybody else have any last minute objections they want to throw out to our pool of pros here? Jelena, Amy, anybody have objections about how do you sell safely in a pandemic? An
Yeah.
issue?
How about, why wouldn't I sell my house myself? It's so easy. All the neighbors' houses sold in, a day,
Yeah, right.
They put a sign in the yard and they didn't do an open house, Is anybody getting that?
Well, how do you answer that one?
I did actually, I got that yesterday. What I said is that statistically, for sale by owner sells for 11% less. And what we do as a team is we come in, we help stage, and we believe that our staging adds approximately $10,000 to the average list price, or the average sale price under $500,000. And then we talk to them about the cost of staging for them. And I say, I like to get at least a 4-to-1 return on anything that I do for an investment. And this is better than that for you, isn't it? And they're like, well, yeah. I said that, and I'd really like to have that 11% go into your pocket. I'm only going to charge you 6% to do it.
That's good. In addition, how about this? We've weathered the storm. Realtors have weathered the storm, and the realtors who are still doing business, generally speaking, a lot of the realtors that are still doing business are those who had the capacity and the energy to weather the storm. So therefore, as we consider these houses in your neighborhood that sold and sold quickly, tell me a little bit about who those realtors were. Oh yeah, one was Brace Helgeson. Okay, good. The other one was Daniel De Rocher. Okay, good to know. The other was Darik Steinbach. Okay, good to know. Now consider that those agents are good agents. They came in, they did all the marketing that was needed to do prior to putting the house on the market, professionally staged the home, advised those clients on what exactly they needed to do to attract their home to multiple buyers, not just one, not just a buyer like you, the seller, but to multiple buyers. Then marketed the home professionally. I mean, the best was Darik, obviously, because Keller Williams has the best system for marketing. But apart from that, they did all of that work in order to get those multiple offers. Then they weeded through those different buyers and were able to advise that client professionally which buyer was actually going to be the best buyer for this transaction to go from start until finish and actually close and make them the money. So that's what I'm proposing that we do for you, is what those other realtors did for those sellers. And the only difference, I apologize, Darik, but it's going to be done better. And this is how.
Darik, do you have a comeback for that?
Yeah, just because my video isn't going doesn't mean I'm not listening. So no, that's funny. Actually, my most recent example of a for sale by owner was earlier this spring. I called on somebody, went over, listed the house. It was a for sale by owner, and I listed the house at our first appointment. And they put the sign in the yard because they thought they'd try, and they didn't really know how to sell their house. So we just started talking through it, and lo and behold, once we got the offer that was over list price, chose a buyer, really a good fit. After that, the seller, in preparing to sell the property, exposed an not previously known well room that was like behind the garage, like a submerged well room, like complete disaster. Like and of course I'm standing there looking at it with him, and I'm like, well, RV, we got to tell him about this, and you're gonna have to get the well sealed. And he just looked at me and he said, I don't know what I would do if you weren't my agent right now. And I'm like, exactly. Like, there's so much going on. Like, people could sell their own house right now, and they may not get as much money. And if they run into a problem, they're not going to have any idea on what to do to keep that transaction going. So
Yeah. Great example. Yeah. Well, if nobody has any other questions for the pros, this has been awesome. It's recorded. We will make it available for people to come back to later. Any final statements, Darik or Rick, that you guys want to share?
I just want to thank the three ladies for joining, obviously Wendy and Heather as well, but thank you for joining, because anytime we can get more information out there, we can share thoughts with each other, I think it's great. So we'll consider this kind of a mini mastermind, and really appreciate you attending.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you guys sharing your information. It's so helpful, and it's just really encouraging. So thank you.
agreed.
It really is great, Rick, and it is something that we can pick up and hear as Wendy and I, or myself, hear what you've said. And I can hear some talk in the office, and I can maybe, share my 2 cents of what I got off the class from Rick and Darik, and then also include where I got it from. So,
Right. The thing is that, like, the reason Rick and I might have these ideas is because we've been in the business for a while and we've heard it, and you only have to hear these things a couple times before you start regurgitating them yourself, and that's just how you learn these things. So glad to help.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
All right.
Thank you guys so much.
No
Get
worries.
out there and
Go
get
some
those
new
listings.
Yeah, go get some new listings.
Thank you.
Amen.
Take care
Thanks,
now.
guys.